Welcome to Film Strip. These podcasts are spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and themes of the films in review. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504(c)(2), Title 17.
Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Ron.
I'm Lindsey.
And this is our review of 2018's The Night Comes For Us, starring Joe Taslim, Iko Uwais, Julia Estelle, Hannah Al-Rashid, Diane Wardoyo, that's a very long name, I should have practiced that beforehand, but too late now, Zach Lee, Sunny Pang, Abimana Aristaria, and the mononymic Rivaldo, which is a very cool one name to have. Released in 2018 with no announced budget or box office grosses that I could find, it's been a big hit among action movie fans and is Netflix's first Indonesian film, even though Netflix itself is banned in Indonesia. This action flick is the brainchild of a guy who's primarily known for his horror direction, Timo Tayano. Lizzie, are you familiar at all with Timo's work?
I'm not that I know of. So this was a first for me.
Have you ever seen May the Devil Take You or May the Devil Take You 2?
No.
Or any of the VHS anthology movies?
Nope.
Well, he is on all of those things. All the good stuff. And he's done a few other like action type movies before, but this is like his big deal action movie. It's actually one of the movies of his I have watched the most, probably because I'm recording it for this podcast. But I'm a fan of the dude, and he's a real nice guy, and he's a good follow on Twitter. And he's been very honest about how many times this movie almost didn't make it. He had the funding together at one point, and it all fell apart in pre-production. So he was going to turn it into a graphic novel, and then Netflix stepped in and said, here's a bag of Netflix money. Let's make some movies. And this is why it'll probably never be on Blu-ray or DVD here in the States, which is a shame because this is one of the movies I would love to buy that is a Netflix streaming exclusive.
Yeah. I mean, if any of his other stuff is even close to The Night Comes For Us, this was an awesome introduction. I think my mouth was agape for 85% of the movie. Just like it was just this amalgamation of, I have no idea exactly what I'm watching, but I love it. And everything about it, I felt like I was taking a class in cinema. Like in cinematography and special effects and blood and gore and all of it. So it was awesome.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, this was kind of Timo's big first learning experience how to do a big-time action movie. And he had a lot of help because the guys he's brought in to be in this movie, Joe Taslim and Iko Uwais, are two of the biggest action movie stars around. You've seen them in like Fast and Furious. They show up in the Star Wars, The Force Awakens as the Kanji gang. A couple of the guys in the Kanji gang. They have been in the Mortal Kombat, the newest Mortal Kombat. Joe Taslim is in it as Sub-Zero. I believe that's him as Sub-Zero. Yeah. And so these guys have been around, and they've been in a lot of good stuff. And if you've ever seen The Raid or The Raid 2, then you are familiar with specifically Iko Uwais' work. And if you haven't seen The Raid and The Raid 2, we've got other movies coming down the pipeline because we've got to get to those if we're going to do this one.
Yeah. I was impressed with the acting in general throughout the movie. I mean, there were pockets of moments where I was like, that wasn't the best, but I think part of it had to do with the only spots of acting that ever I was like not my favorite was in the English scenes. Everything else was I was unexpectedly, happily surprised by all of it. Because I feel like in any action movie, I mean, no one's watching it for the acting. You're watching it because, you're going to blow shit up. And in this case, you're going to see a lot of sweet fight scenes. But I was pleasantly surprised through the whole thing. I still really didn't know what I was watching, but I loved it.
I feel like some of that might have been down to Netflix pushing for a little bit more English content. You see in a lot of international movies, they shoot scenes in English to make the film itself feel more global.
Hmm.
And I know Joe Taslim and Aiko Uwais have both worked really hard on learning their English, and that might have also been part of it too. But I feel like that was a necessary decision to make because this is not a one group of people organization, right? We're talking about the triad, and
Hmm.
that has consumed the bulk of Southeast Asia, and they need some sort of lingua franca to draw them all together. And English is the international language of trade. Why would it not be the international language for crime when you've got Hong Kong gangsters and Indonesian gangsters and Vietnamese gangsters and all these gangsters coming together to sell drugs and uh, traffic humans?
Yeah. I mean, I thought the points at which they used English was clearly intentional and it made sense within the whole of the movie. So that switching between languages, because we had a number of different languages being used throughout the movie, but it it didn't take me out of it. It definitely felt intentional, but I could also feel I think, I don't know if it's discomfort necessarily, but you can tell there's, I think, a barrier there when there was English being used, which honestly, it didn't take me out of it. It was just a really small thing that I picked up on while I was watching it.
Well, in that case, since we're talking about the movie as a whole, let's go ahead and get to the plot summary, which I will try to get through without coughing my head off.
You can do it, Ron.
Uh, One of us believes that. Ito, played by Joe Taslim, has been away from home on various missions for the Triad. Given he's one of their primary enforcers, called the Six Seas, it's only natural that he's going to stay pretty busy. When he finally does come back home to Indonesia, he's got a job: eliminate a fishing village, leave no survivors. And he does just that, except for one small problem. One of the fishing villagers is a young girl, and Ito just doesn't have the lack of heart needed to murder a child. So he turns around and kills his goons while getting shot himself, although we find that out later in a flashback scene. As you can imagine, blind obedience is a prerequisite for the job of being in the Triad, and when Ito fails in this task, he draws the ire of fellow Six Seas member Chien Wu, who tasks up-and-coming gangster Aryan to take out his old pal in exchange for control of the lucrative Jakarta market, the possibility of replacing his buddy on the Six Seas. Ito heads back to his girlfriend Shinta's apartment, where his gunshot is patched up by his old friend Fatih. The two have a reunion, and Ito finds out that the old gang is all gone except for Fatih, his cousin Wisnu, and white boy Bobby, who got them all tangled up in the Triad in the first place due to his drug problem. Ito gets passports and heads to round up some money from another old acquaintance, Johann the Butcher, at his shop. Turns out Johann is also working for the Triad, and we has fight. Ito kills Johann's men in a brutal fight, but not before the cops show up and take him down. The gang war is officially on. More Triad thugs head to Fatih's apartment, and Bobby gets Shinta to safety before returning to fight with his friends and defend Reina from the killers. They hold off the thugs until Triad enforcers Elena and Alma arrive. They kill both Johann's men and Wisnu. Bobby makes the heroic sacrifice to get Fatih and Reina to escape, and the two are almost killed by Alma in the stairwell before Aryan intervenes and knocks her out. Nice to get some help from an old friend, right? Except no, this old friend is the very guy who betrayed their location to the Triad in the first place. Fatih shoots Aryan, or so we think, and then more thugs come pouring into the parking garage. Fatih's turn to sacrifice his life to save Reina, turning a car into a weapon in a very cool series of scenes. Before the thugs could track down Reina, they all get shot down by a mysterious woman named the Operator. In case you can't tell, this movie's got a lot of stuff going on. Ito rolls over the police van he's being held in and escapes after killing a bunch of cops. He finds all of his friends dead, but Reina's still alive, and the two retreat to Shinta's apartment where the Operator finds them. The Operator and Ito fight, but Reina intervenes and stops the killing of Ito, allowing him to tug at the Operator's heartstrings with his sad tale of redemption. Turns out she's hunting Six Seas, and Ito was on the list, but now that he's had a change of heart, so has she. Possibly. Next, we get a flashback of Ito and Aryan in better days, hanging out in a warehouse and teasing Bobby. The warehouse comes back into play as Ito heads down there to kill absolutely every son of a bitch he can find, while the Operator tries to get Reina to safety. Between the Operator and Ito, it seems like 100 thugs die, including Elena and Alma in a very spectacular three-way fight with the Operator. With all the thugs dispatched, it's time for our main event. Ito versus Aryan. Joe Taslim versus Aiko Uwais. It's one of the most brutal fights in movie history, with the two battling all over the warehouse and using everything not nailed down as weapons. It is absolutely beautiful. Both guys are half dead by the time the fight is over. Arion can't kill Ito, and Ito refuses to kill Arion, choosing to leave and get Reina to safety. Chien Wu shows up to mock Arion for failing. Then, Arion is killed by his own associates, including his former assistant. Ito gets Reina on the ship, but doesn't get on himself. Instead, he heads back to his car where he sees Chien Wu and the Triad coming towards him. With a maniacal grin on his face, he puts the car into gear and floors the accelerator as credits roll. So we get the Devil's Rejects ending where we don't know how it ends, but it seems like it's going to end badly for Ito.
But it seemed like that in a lot of places in this movie, and it didn't. So you never know.
Yeah, let's talk for a minute about Joe Taslim and just how indestructible this Ito character is. He kills, I don't know, what's the 50, 60 people by himself?
I mean, he almost has this mythical, all these stories about him, and he is the indestructible dude. Like, it's crazy. And at the end, I was like, no, he's definitely not going to die here. That's definitely not going to happen. We just saw him brutally murder like you said, like 30, 40, 50 guys. I don't even know. I don't want to skip right to the second to last fight, I guess, but man, that was crazy. There was just so much going on in every single fight. There was so much going on. I mean, I was there for it for sure. I'm still processing it because I just finished watching it like an hour and a half ago. So it's still really fresh in my mind. I will probably be dreaming about intestines tonight at some point.
Yeah, and there is no shortage of intestine spillage in this movie. But before we jump to that fight, we're going to go ahead and have to start off with the inciting incident, the setup here. Ito having the change of heart at seeing the little girl on the beach surrounded by all her dead friends and family members. How do you feel about that as a redemptive moment for Ito?
I didn't understand it at first. So when I first started watching the movie, my thought was more of is there something supernatural or special about this child, and that's why he saved her? Is she some kind of relation? Is there some other motive for him saving her? And then we find out later that no, he just finally had a turn of heart, and his conscience kind of poked its head out, and that was that. I mean, this movie, I wouldn't say plot was its strong point, but I get after, I mean, I can't empathize with it. I haven't murdered like thousands of people, but as a plot device, I understand the purpose of him trying to turn his life around, or not turn his life around, but having some form of redemption when he finally meets his maker, and he can say, well, I murdered thousands of people, but I did save this one little girl. So there's that.
Well, it's like the Futurama joke about Zap Brannigan defeating the robot army because all of the killbots, they had a preset kill limit, and once you hit that kill limit, they shut down. And he defeated them by throwing wave after wave of his own men at them. It's kind of like that, except Ito doesn't have a preset kill limit. He has like a preset innocent person kill limit.
Yeah,
and then he has unlimited. Like, he's the Olive Garden of Triad murder. It's unlimited breadsticks and unlimited dead guys.
Yeah, I think for me too, I was just like, this little girl, she is just cool with like, hanging out with the guy that helped murder her entire village.
Yeah, except we don't see Ito killing any of the villagers in front of her.
That's true.
It's all the other goons doing it, then he kills his goons later.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good point. This girl that's probably, horrible trauma manifesting in some way. Or it's because Ito turns her over to some of like my favorite dudes in moviedom.
Yes. What is it? White boy Bobby?
Yeah, Bobby is, of the three guys, we got Fadi, Wisnu, and Bobby. Bobby is 100% one of my most favorite people in this movie.
Yeah. I would agree with you there.
That actor Zach Lee is in the Raid 2 and in some other stuff. He's always a lot of fun when he shows up in a thing. I don't know what his story is or how he, how he got involved with these movies, but the dude is a legit like character. And the detail about when they first meet and Ito grabs him and throws him to the ground and Bobby falls, but his foot stays in the same place because he's missing a foot. That made me laugh so hard, and that's made me
That
laugh when I watched it.
that was great. And then he walked like he had a fake foot for the rest of his time in the movie. I think that was a little campy for me. I enjoyed it very much. It made me laugh. I know someone with a fake foot and they don't limp at all. So the exaggerated limp. I don't know.
Yeah,
It kind of added to his character.
yeah, but does your friend with the fake foot also have a drug problem like Bobby? Because
Yeah, I think he might have. It was-
that wobble might be heroin,
that's true. That's fair.
and that also might explain why Bobby's almost indestructible at certain points in this movie.
Oh man, he was what was okay, that crazy like machete scene where all those guys just kept coming and coming and coming into the apartment and he was going crazy killing them and he was only about a quarter of the way through the scene. I didn't know that at the time, but it was right after he helped kill like a bunch of the other dudes and he pulled out that wet floor metal thing that he had as his like chest armor.
Yes, he voluntarily lets himself get shot
Yeah.
wearing the chest protection.
And then after he's got this crazed look in his eyes and I was like, "Okay, yeah, this is what I expect from this character." And he gets slapped a few times to kind of take him out of it. And then we have waves and waves and waves of more people coming and trying to kill them. That felt like a zombie scene for me.
Yeah, 100% that felt like a zombie barricade scene. And I
Mhm.
we're skipping the butcher shop fight, but we'll come back to it. But
Yeah.
while we're talking about this one, I absolutely love the way they shot it. And I love the overhead camera angle where you can see Fadi holding the people back as they're just pushing forward and forward. And it's just this wave of guys trapped in a hallway. And he's using the smallness of the hallway as a way to keep the numbers manageable so he can hack one dude at a time before they all finally bust in.
Yep.
Really well done. And also, I feel like not seen as Bobby in the elevator taking a real quick hit of crystal meth to get absolutely crazed up for this fight.
Yeah, that's what we don't see. I feel like it's safe to assume that happened. You mentioned the camera angle, and I know it's going to come up a lot more throughout this whole discussion, but right off the bat, the camera angles were just so interesting. Like all of the choices made with all of the different angles and different shots that were taken, I'm still processing it, but it was just so cool. It was so different and interesting. I was really into it.
Yeah, that's one of Tayano's hallmarks is that he does some creative stuff with the camera. But I think one of the reasons why all these fight scenes work is that they were all put together by Iko Uwais. So one of the guys doing the fight is putting all the fights together. He was the fight coordinator, and he worked really closely with Joe Taslim, and he worked real closely with the other actors to figure out what they could do, what they couldn't do, what they were comfortable with, and the best ways to use all of their different physicality. Like one of the many things I love about this movie is when Bobby just randomly grabs a guy and throws him out a window.
Yeah.
And the guy just falls to his death. And I just laugh at that every time because Bobby throws him out the window like a bag of garbage.
That same scene right before he does that, he gets his face put into the window by, I don't know, the guy that he's fighting.
Uh-huh.
And that impact and the blood that happens, like right when his face hits the window, was maybe one of my favorite effects in the entire film.
Yeah, the blood that happens and the way they hold so you can see his eyes rolling around in his head and like his face is literally mashed against the window. You can't fake that because his nose is like pointing the wrong direction. It's just wonderfully done.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's got to be a lot of Sam Raimi in Timo's mental director Rolodex, because he's doing some Sam Raimi-ish stuff with the flying camera, with the great facial close-ups, with a lot of the way he's shooting and moving his camera specifically.
The sound design on all that too was, I mean, skillfully, artfully crafted. Every punch, every tooth flying out of someone's head, every piece of glass breaking, like the sound design and mixing on the movie was, I mean, I meant it when I said it. This I felt like I was taking a class in 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 a bunch of different parts of film. Sound, fight choreography, cinematography, all of it.
This sound is absolutely super crisp. And I recently bought a sound bar for my TV, and putting this film through the sound bar, it sounded great. So I'm very happy with that purchase.
Yep.
And I'm very happy that this was the first movie I watched with the sound bar on that wasn't like a Tinkerbell thing with my daughter. So
Excellent. Well, congratulations. You know what? I will say too, I watch a ton of movies where I have to hold the volume remote because the sound mixing and all of that is so off, and it's so quiet when it's quiet and so aggressively loud when it's loud. And this was one of the first things I watched in recent memory where I didn't have to constantly toggle the volume on anything, like throughout the entire movie.
yeah, I think that's a great point. I usually have the same problem. I have to turn things up, or I have to watch subtitles or closed caption in order to hear the dialogue over the roar of the background. But I didn't really have that problem in this movie, even when they're partially because it's already subtitled, partially because even when they were speaking
That's
English,
true.
you could hear them because they were actually mic'd, and like they made a point to keep the dialogue up in the mix enough to where you could hear it over the sounds that going on around them. I thought that was a really nice touch.
Yep. Unless it was intentionally, deleted or drowned out. And there were a few scenes like that where.
Yeah, but at that point, it's something deliberate being done. It's a choice that's made, not just, somebody accidentally unplugged their mic pack.
Exactly. Butcher
But
shop.
Let's get to the end of that fight. Let's get back to the butcher shop.
Yes.
One of the things I like most is that Johan the Butcher looks like the Indonesian version of every hipster butcher I've ever seen. The long hair and the aviator glasses, surly, really not like in the mood to serve you food, but has to do it because that's the job he's chosen.
Yep. Just very, hipster is a good word. I like that.
Possibly a front for an organized crime ring, because how could a butcher shop stay in business in 2018?
Yeah. They really, a butcher shop was such a great setting for like such a, was it one of the first fights in the movie?
It's the first big fight we see of Ito. We get we get Ariane fighting in a strip club in the very beginning of the movie, where he smashes a broken bottle into a guy's mouth, which is
that was
phenomenal.
Wild. Yeah.
Because the guy was mad that a hostess / stripper / prosto spilled wine on him.
How dare she? But yeah, no, that was a good fight scene. But the use of the whole butcher shop, man, I feel like there were a lot of intestines in that one too. I like that I can't remember the butcher's name. He just
Johan.
kept getting slowly maimed and beat up. There were a few people like that just, he avoided many, many times, immediate death, and everyone else was, going through it. But man, there were a few broken bones. I think he lost a finger or a few. I think he was missing one of his fingers in like the first scene, because butchers famously don't have all their digits. But
right. And Johan's introduced by getting his face smashed into the display case and breaking his nose.
Oh, and what was he was like, "Oh, you're such an asshole," which that made me laugh. So his reactions to getting beat up cracked me up. don't be such a dick, or whatever he said. That was one of two, that was a really great use of English as well, when he was asked, I think by Ito, like, you're Johan or something. And he said, in the flesh. And he used that one small sentence in English. And I was like, that was a great intentional use of an alternate language there. But yeah, no, his reactions to having the shit kicked out of him cracked me up.
And to have all of the butchers around him get killed. They really make use of every possible implement you could have in a butcher shop. Like
they really do.
The meat hooks, even the plastic, the circular saw, even the plastic curtains between the freezer and the hallway, even the office window. They just use every part of the shop for mayhem. It's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And it's this moment where you realize, oh, this is the kind of movie this is going to be. And you're either 100% stuck in or you're 100% out, I think, because this is really your litmus test on whether or not you're going to stick with this movie and if you're going to dig this movie or not, I think.
Yeah. Yep. It passed the litmus test for me. I was definitely a stuck person after that one. The blood was just, it was such a great use of gore and blood and guts. I mean, arguably, there was a lot of it. So I could see where people would think it was excessive. I didn't feel like it was excessive. There were a few cringy moments in the film, which I'm sure we'll get to, but I dug it.
The least bloody moment in the film is the thing that made me cringe the most while watching it. We will definitely get to it, but you might even know where I'm headed with this.
I might.
But yeah, a moment with absolutely no blood or guts or saws or entrails is the thing that made me wince and double over in pain in this movie. And this is a movie where you see people like their testicles crushed with billiard balls, and one guy gets hooked to the nuts with a meat hook and drawn up through his belly, and saws and hatchets and kukris and machetes and bullets and claymores and
death by 1,000 cuts with box openers and
oh, that box opener. Oh man, that's another thing that got me, because I have cut myself with box openers at jobs. I have worked many jobs where I had to cut open boxes or pack things in boxes or break down cardboard. That has happened to me. It's not a good thing. It bleeds like crazy. But we'll get there too. All right. So we get through the butcher shop fight and we figure out just who we're dealing with when Johan makes a phone call and the police show up. Although we don't know they're the police at the time. We don't know they're the police until Ito wakes up in the back of a police van and he's surrounded by cops talking about taking money from the dirty Chinese or whatever they say to solve this problem, and how they have to ignore, like, because while the cops are riding around with him in the back of the car, they get a call about the insane violence going down at the apartment. And they're like, well, we're supposed to respond to that. I don't know. We're going to get this guy and we're taking all this money. But then they should have realized that there's nowhere you're safe from Ito when it's time for you to die, because that close quarters back of the police van fight is phenomenal. Is another great fight. This movie's just riddled with great fights, and they're all different. They're all done in a different way.
Yeah. So it never got, you would think with so many fight scenes in a 2-hour film that it would get old or stale or boring. And every single one was so different. And the settings and not just that, but I feel like the fight choreography was switched up a lot throughout as well. So it just kept it really like fresh and interesting.
Yeah, I think that's if Iko Uwais decides that he no longer wants to be in front of the camera at some point, he could have a full-time career as an action choreographer, because from the gunplay to the knife play to the hand-to-hand combat to the improvised weaponry that come into play in this throughout this movie, there is nothing about any of these fights that is really overdone, and there's nothing about any of these fights that feels like, oh, he's already used this trick, he's using that trick again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in the back of the police van, that very last moment where he's got his leg up and that giant taser thing right
Mhm.
next to the guy and the gun, he does this look and it's like, oh, you know exactly what's about to happen. And
Yeah.
then it happens and it's not disappointing at all. It's just like, yes, that's exactly what I wanted to see. So, and then of course, you know, the thing flips over and
Even the dodgy moment where the grenade explodes and blows that guy into chunks doesn't necessarily bother me that much because it's not great CGI. It's pretty good CGI though, but
there's
it's
so
just
many body chunks
well,
throughout.
the fact that it's the CGI explosion is merged with they just clearly chucked a bucket full of pieces into the scene to marry the digital explosion with the practical splatter. It's just beautifully done, and it's one of those things that it's so audacious and so wild that I'm like, I don't even care that it didn't look great because the idea itself was so insane.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it didn't I can't even it didn't bother me at all. None of it did.
All right, so we
What?
head back to the apartment, and
Yeah.
we get back. We've already talked a lot about the apartment fight, so we're not going to get there. But we're going to talk about the moment when Elena and Alma show up. Elena and Alma are the blonde-haired and the Asian uh, females that are later dismissed by Xian Wu as weird lesbians,
Mhm. Mhm.
which is I don't think he thinks they're weird because they're lesbians. I think he just was describing them as weird lesbians because they're two really weird characters.
People. Yeah.
When
Who also happen to be, at least it seems, lesbians.
right, they would be weird regardless of their sexualities. But when
Yes.
Elena pulls that kukri out of her coat, I don't know if you ever watched a show called Deadly as a Warrior that was on Spike TV, but they would have all
No.
these. They would bring fighters from different eras from around the world or whatever. They would bring experts in these ancient weapons to come and talk, and they would have a competition like who would win in a fight. A Roman centurion or an Apache or something like that. And so they would have these real life experts in these weapons come and demonstrate the weapons and talk about the weapons. And they would do things like chopping up pig bodies or stabbing ballistic gel torsos or whatever to demonstrate the
Okay.
capability of these weapons. And the kukri was always one of my favorite knives that they used because it's got that wider cutting surface that just really dug in when you slashed the ballistics gel torso or whatever you were slashing. I don't remember if it was the pig or the ballistics gel torso, but when she shows up and she pulls that kukri out, the first time I saw it, I was like, "Oh, this this is where shit's going to get serious for Bobby." Still
Yeah.
thinking that Bobby was going to possibly win this fight because I feel like at a certain point, there's like in an action movie, you're like, "Oh, well, these guys are friends of the hero; they're going to make it." This is like
Mhm.
Bobby's like the number one sidekick. Crazy white boy Bobby is going to just debo through this fight like nobody's business, and no, he squares off with her to give Fadi a chance to escape. He squares off with her to give Fadi a chance to escape, and she just murks him. Like it's not
Yeah.
even really a contest. The only thing that's a real contest is when she guts him, but he pushes himself forward on the knife to grab her by the wrist, and she has to pry his death grip off of her, literal death grip, in his final moment. And it's such a sad moment to see Bobby die, but like he goes out like a boss.
Yeah. No, I feel I definitely got the impression that everyone is expendable in this movie. And I was happy to see Bobby stick around as long as he did. I would have liked him to stick around more. I'm with you, Ron, definitely one of my favorites. But that yeah, the the blonde chick was weird and clearly possessed by some demon. She just had this really like weird, creepy look about her and her demeanor, and she didn't say a whole lot. And she always just looked like not human almost.
Yeah, they make really good use of her very distinctive face and her very distinctive haircut at the time.
Hmm.
Um, and those two characters especially really work as like more color for the triad. Like this is an organization that has the 6 C's. Why would they not have the 5 lotuses? Or the
Yeah.
5 lotus killers? And they establish later on that they're like a thing that the people in the underworld know about. So they're just as like notorious as the 6 C's in a different way. And like everybody knows who these two women are when they show up. If you're one of the triad thugs.
That's true. And you can see it on everyone's faces when they roll into a room that this is not going to end well.
Yeah. When they step off that elevator, Johan's men know immediately, oh, we're screwed. So they run
Yep.
to attack her and they get disposed of before she disposes of Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
But then in the stairwell, we get a little tease like Arion might be not completely on the Triad side because he steps in when they're fighting Alma and just straight up kicks her through a door, which made me laugh and laugh and laugh.
And she was using that crazy thing, which it's terrifying. I mean, it's just like I don't know if there's a name for it. Ron, you watch that show, so you might know, but the like wire that she uses.
Yeah, it's almost like a combination of the ball and chain thing that Go-Go
Yeah.
Yabari used to kill Bill, and then also just like simple strangulating piano wire.
Mm-hmm.
If you get someone with piano wire around the neck like that, you can pretty much saw through their head if you keep trying.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that's called either, but it's dope, and they really make a good use of this like murder yo-yo that she has.
That's exactly because it had some weight to it. I mean, she could really swing that thing around. It was terrifying.
Yeah, it actually has
really
a name,
cool.
but I'm not sure what the name is. It's like a traditional Chinese kind of weapon.
Mm-hmm.
But I forget what it's called, and I can't look it up now because when I type in murder yo-yo, I get a bunch of weird results on my Google.
So, note to self, listeners, don't Google murder yo-yo. Or, I'm not here to dictate what you do with your life. Go ahead, Google murder yo-yo if you want. No, that was really cool. And then we moved to the like parking garage scene shortly after that, right?
Yeah, we move almost immediately to the parking garage where it's Fadi's turn to kind of sacrifice his life.
Mm-hmm.
But we get that nice little moment where Ariana's talking to him and Fadi just looks at him and is like, "You're the one who gave them my information. You're the only one who knows where I live. Johan never knew where I lived." And then we hear the gunshot, so we think, "Oh, he shot him." So
Mm-hmm.
we get kind of a double. We think Ariane might be a good guy, but no, turns out he's not. We think he might have just been shot, but turns out no, Fadi couldn't do that to one of his oldest friends.
Yep. And for the second, when they didn't show his death, I was like, that dude's definitely still alive. First rule, if you don't see him die, they're definitely not dead yet.
Even if you see him die, sometimes they're not dead.
That's true, too.
But yeah, that's
true, too.
But then we get the second series of the parking garage fight where we have the thing where the guy gets crushed between the wall and the car, which is a thing that always makes my legs hurt, but isn't the thing that I'm talking about that really made me cringe. It just made me laugh. It's so gleefully, like, it's so insane. And Fadi is just like chill as a cucumber, smoking a cigarette, shooting a machine gun out the window. And then we get the scene where the thug leaps onto the back of the car and is trying to grab Raina through the windshield. So she pulls that little penknife out and she shanks him in the neck. Like she just
a number of times.
Yeah, like 8 times. She just stabbed this guy in the neck screaming and he's just spraying blood everywhere. And I'm like, oh, okay, movie.
Yeah. She was definitely, I guess, a child of war or destruction and murder and all that, because all this crazy stuff is happening and she's sitting in the back seat of a car and she was just like, oh, I better put my seatbelt on.
Yeah, which was really funny because it turns out she needed that seatbelt.
Uh-huh. Worked out really well for her.
But yeah, I really enjoy that scene and I really like Fadi's kind of final sacrifice where he meets his end, but then we get our first appearance of Julia Stell as the operator, who is very mysterious and looks great in her crazy black leather outfit and her full-face motorcycle helmet she's got the gun with the laser sight, and that's movie talk for this is someone not to be messed with.
Yeah, and everything from the helmet, that was probably one of my favorite costumes in the entire film, and she really did wear that costume well. And she had the cool bike helmet too with the like button visor thing.
You can change it between the blackout visor and the see-through visor.
Yeah,
you get that great shot where she pushes the little thing and it
Yep.
pops back into clear, and you can see her eyes looking out. She's got those killer eyes.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, later in the movie, we see her take that jacket off, and she's got like the one, it's like the half arm, or
Mm-hmm.
how do I describe it? It's one long sleeve and one no sleeve side of the shirt. I don't know. She just looked super badass in that whole outfit. I mean, she was
It's
badass in the whole movie, but
and it's such a cool reveal that she's got the one long sleeve on, and then she's got the other short sleeve. Like she needs her gun arm free for
I
shooting.
know. When she took her jacket off and it showed that nice little reveal, I was just like, "Oh shit, she's about to do some damage now!" Like that is, it's such a great, it's such a great use of costuming. It's such a good choice.
Yeah, and Julia Stell, the operator, was actually supposed to get this sequel movie where she goes
Oh,
after the rest of the Six Seas, and so far that hasn't happened. But I hope that Timo hasn't quite given up hope. They'd
oh
actually
man.
going to do it with Netflix, but Netflix, as you know, recently has decided to not spend any money anymore. So
Mm,
their funding fell through on that. But I think he retains the rights. So I'm thinking he might still be trying to do something with that, either
that'd be
make a movie
sweet.
independently or do it as like a graphic novel, which would also be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be cool. It's only 2022, so we're only 4 years out. He could still make a sequel 10 years from now. You don't know.
Yeah.
I'd watch it.
Oh, 100%. So we get to the scene in the apartment where Ito kind of has this breakdown because all his friends are dead, and Reina comes in to give him some moral support, which is very sweet. It makes me think of my own child, who every time I look sad or pretend to cry or something, she comes over to hug me and says, "Daddy, it's okay,"
Oh,
which
that's
is
so
very
cute.
sweet. 3-year-old, and it's sweet at any age, really, to have emotional support from a child. But yeah, the operator shows up and she takes off her coat, and then they has fight again, and it's another really good fight where they make great use of the physical size difference between the two, because the operator never like squares up with Ito. She's
Hmm.
always like moving and shifting and doing judo throws and using his weight and his strength and his leverage against him, and just chucking him around this apartment, which and using her kicks to keep him at bay. It's really well done stuff, I think.
That's it. She is, and I'm going to reference wrestling a few times when we talk about this. There's one other moment that I will absolutely reference, but she definitely looks like you know, one of the lightweight wrestlers, just flying all over the place and doing all the flips and
Yeah, she even does
bouncing
like
around.
the flying head scissors or whatever
Yep.
she goes
Yep.
for, the like flying guillotine choke. And I really enjoy the part where she hucks him, flips him over and smashes him through the sink, and you just see that little spray of water out into the scene from
Yep.
a what's clearly a practical pipe. And that Ito, when he gets up, he just sprays the water on himself and just doesn't even notice.
That was that was a good one. And then they have that interaction about the girl, right? And that's kind of when she, I guess, decides not to kill him. But wasn't it she was contracted to kill him, right? That's her backstory.
Yes,
Okay.
she was contracted to kill all of the Six Seas, I believe.
Okay.
She was going to go after him because there's two of them together with him and Qian Wu, whose 6C
I
name
gotcha.
is Big Spender, which I thought was really fun. Because Ito's just Enforcer, which is completely appropriate for that guy. But
Yeah.
Qian Wu, who's always wearing like a crazy shirt or some kind of crazy suit, is Big Spender. And that made me laugh because that seems very appropriate for
I did
a dude
not
who
catch
dresses
that.
like Sonny Phan's
Yeah.
character. Yeah.
Yeah, that fits for sure. The
But
enforcer.
yeah, but he says, "You can kill me. You just have to help me keep this girl safe. This isn't her fault." And it's fun because Reina is like the conscience of both of them. She has him. She gets Ito to change his ways to reverse course, and then the operator, has some few interactions with the girl, and she's like, "You know what? Maybe I don't have to just kill this guy right now. Maybe I can let him. Maybe I can keep this girl safe and throw a little support his way, and some very much needed support because." Ito goes off to the warehouse to fight absolutely everyone in Indonesia, and then the rest of Indonesia is coming after the operator because that's Ito's old apartment, and they know that Reina's there.
Hmm.
But those guys. We won't go to the warehouse fight yet, but we'll go with that. We'll stay with the operator for now because we get the great scene where she's planted traps just in waiting for these guys to show up, and that's where she pops those claymores, and that always the use of claymores as a offensive weapon always makes me happy.
Yeah. It was unexpected for me. And then I saw them. It was, well, I don't think I recognized them immediately. It took me a minute for my brain to kind of catch up with what the movie was doing. But man, she's such a badass.
Yeah, she's really a great character, and Julia Estelle herself. She's done a few little parts in some of these other Indonesian action movies, and she's always just like a scene stealer. And this is was like her reward for stealing part of the Raid 2. I think it was the Raid 2. I think it was the Raid 2. But yeah, they always do a really good job of setting up these action scenes, and you see like a real brief shot of the explosives in her collection of stuff from her bag. It doesn't linger long enough for you to realize what they are until you see them waiting to be triggered, blinking on the side of the wall.
Yep. And she waits until just the right time, like she knew. And there was during that scene too, I guess she had told Raina to hide in the bathtub with a bunch of pillows over her. And I love that little exchange they had. It was only for a second where she is standing right in front of the bathroom door and Raina kind of peeks her head up outside of the pillows. And she just looks at her like, no, back down. And Raina's like, okay, and hides back under the pillows.
It's really funny because we don't live in Tornado Alley, but we live close enough to have spent a night in a bathtub with pillows over us before. At least I have. I don't know about you, but
I've never. Yeah, no, hurricanes, yes, tornadoes, not so much.
I guess the being on the other side of the Appalachian Mountains makes a big difference in that. But yeah, that's a great moment, and it sets up the fight with Elena and Alma showing up to finally have it out with the operator.
Yeah.
Who instantly recognizes him for who they are and says, like, yo, you're number 3 and you're number 5 of the Lotus. And Alma says, I always thought that ranking thing was stupid. And then they start fighting. But not before the operator says, in a great joke, you're really going to regret wearing white to this.
Yes. That was expertly landed. And her reaction to it too was really good. Like you could tell it was the last thing she was expecting to hear.
Yeah, that's really funny. And for 3 people who aren't who don't really have a background in martial arts except for possibly Julia Estelle, they do a really good job of putting this fight scene together to hide various weaknesses and to make all 3 of them look good. I was watching this fight with my wife, or I was watching the movie with my wife, and when you got to this fight, she was like, I think it's pretty great that they had a really kick-ass 3-girl fight that wasn't just like, a cat fight. It was like it was as badass as any of the fights the men had, which is a great point.
That was definitely a note that I had is I got the impression, I mean, it clearly was still a male-heavy profession, but the women who showed up were just as badass, if not more so. And their fight scenes were, I feel like, given equal attention. And I would agree. Like, they looked great. Oh, the scene was so crazy, though, with just I guess, I don't know, which one do we want to talk about first? I mean, obviously, what was her name in the movie? The one with the piano wire.
Alma.
Yep. And, dies famously by piano wire or murder yo-yo.
What a great use of a window unit air conditioner.
Yep.
And when she saw it, that was a great moment.
Yep. I was like, sweet. This is like, I had flashbacks to that Seinfeld episode where the air conditioner falls out of the window.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like Murder Seinfeld. That's what we're watching here right now. But that was...
And White Boy Bobby is Kramer because he just busts through the door.
Yep. But all of the effects, even with we see it, slicing into her neck in that moment. But then when she fully dies and the ends of her fingers just drop off onto the floor, That was a nice touch.
That's a really cool moment. And that's like where Timo's horror background comes into play, because he's
Yeah.
not. You don't get a lot of mayhem like that in action movies. You just get mostly you get a bunch of squibs exploding or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But to see like the actual grievous bodily injuries that come as a result of these things, and we're going to get to some grievous bodily injuries when we get to the warehouse fight, but
Oh, yes.
it's just a nice touch that's both kind of quickening and also really funny because it's not expected.
Yeah.
You don't expect to see the fingertips just fall to the ground and roll around, but man, it really works.
Yeah, it does. And then we get Girl Fight Part 2.
Yeah, where Elena and the operator fight with that Kukri, and
Mm-hmm.
you talked about some guts. That's some surprise entrails happen at the end of this fight.
That was surprise entrails. Also the operator just breaking her own finger off was not something I was ready to see. I was like, oh, okay. Well,
my wife
I should have expected it, but
yeah, my wife who has a real thing about compound fractures and stuff and hates compound fractures and things. I was like, hey, just cover your eyes.
yeah.
Once the entrails popped out, she was like, "Oh!" And I was like, "Yeah, cover your eyes real quick." And then she heard the sound of the finger thing, and I said she ripped her own half-severed finger off.
Yeah,
she just made a face
and she didn't even flinch when she did it. It was just like, oh, whoops, snapped it off. I like to think that she put it in her pocket so that she could go get it reattached.
I like to think that she just like threw it down the stairwell. Actually, she probably put it in her pocket so that way it wouldn't be traced back to her.
Could be. Yeah.
It's got a fingerprint on it. They could probably track her with the one finger.
I mean, if she's worried about fingerprints, I feel like she'd be the type that, can't you like burn or slice your fingerprints off? Isn't that
That's
a thing?
Good point. Yeah, you can burn your fingerprints off.
Yeah. I feel like she'd be the type to do that.
Working with kitchen staff like I am, we have a lot of people who have no fingerprints.
Yeah.
And whenever I was doing hiring, I could always tell who was in for a kitchen job because they would come to do fingerprints and they would have no fingerprint. 30 years of scalding hot pans tend to do that to you, and it's permanent. So,
Is it really? I did not know that.
It can be. I mean, they eventually will grow back, but for most of these people, their fingertips are just all callous. So it's just smooth because after a while, you just get used to picking up hot pans and hot pots and spilling hot things and whatnot. You just kind of get immune to the heat.
Yeah.
So it's like, tip for all you budding criminals out there, work in a kitchen for a few years and get nice fingertip calluses worked up, and then you can sneak around thieving anything you want.
That's funny. I feel like I've seen many a grandma, just pick up a searing hot potato or pot or something, because they've done it their whole lives. And I guess that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But we digress.
Yep. And now it's time to get to what may be the movie's like biggest fight. What is the movie's biggest fight, literally and also possibly figuratively? The warehouse fight, where Ito goes into the warehouse that used to be his, and he has to fight all the Yakuza thugs. And he literally starts on the ground floor and fights his way through the entire facility. He just plows through 50 guys.
Easily. But before he does that, he says, just know that you're dying by one of the members of the 6 C's. And you can see for a minute, they all hesitate. And then they just go for it, much to their demise.
Yeah, and we see Ito before the fight putting phone books on himself as improvised armor. Last seen by me in the movie Ricochet, where John Lithgow has that prison fight.
I don't know if I've ever seen that movie. I'll add it to the list.
You should. It's
many movies I haven't seen.
Well, John Lithgow makes basically samurai armor out of phone books, so just letting you know that that's what you're in for.
Okay, yeah.
And, he's picking a fight with Denzel Washington later in the movie, but okay, that is a digression. What is your favorite part of this warehouse fight? Because there's so much stuff that happens.
Oh my god. Let's see. I really there was just so much going on. I feel like I had to rewind it a couple times, rewind it back up. I don't know. Is is rewind the right term now when you're streaming?
Sure.
Yeah, I had to go back just to make sure I was seeing what I was seeing. Probably the pool balls. I was a big fan of the use of that. I thought that was pretty creative. I appreciated that bit.
Where he smashed the guy in the face with it, or where he ripped the pool ball pocket out of the thing and swung it around like a club, or both.
I like that. Well, I like both, but I like the pool ball pocket thing. It was very. It was like an aggressive version of Full Metal Jacket soap in the pillowcase situation, you know?
Yeah. Or is it Hard to Kill, where Steven Seagal does a similar thing with a pool ball to bash a guy's head in a fight?
Maybe. I honestly and truly have not seen a Steven Seagal movie since I was probably in middle school because my stepdad loved them and I watched them, or he was watching them all the time.
It's
But
one
it's
of the
been,
ones back when it's one of the ones back when Seagal still has his original hair.
yeah.
So,
His long flowing locks.
but yeah, Ito uses every possible weapon available here.
Mm-hmm.
And the fight goes on for a long time, but never gets boring.
No.
My favorite part of the fight is when he picks the dude up on his shoulders and spins around, and uses the guy as a weapon against the other guys. Like Terry Funk in a ladder match, when Terry Funk would put the ladder on his shoulders and spin around, and the guys would run into it.
Yep. There's our second wrestling reference of the night.
Yep, and it's only to be interrupted by the guys coming in with the guns.
Mm-hmm.
But he's got the shotgun he took off of the one guy and a can of gasoline, and then we get our first guys on fire of the movie.
Yeah, and they were, as far as guys on fire go, they were, they were your pretty standard guys on fire. There was the arm waving, very, what do you call it, stunt devilish. I will say the scene right after when the fire's put out, the special effects makeup of their like charred skin, right on point.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. And it's a pretty good guy on fire because there's three of them and they're like all running around together in the scene, like separately doing different things. It's not the Swamp Thing guy on fire where Swamp Thing, the pre-Swamp Thing scientist Alec is on fire and he runs down the pier and throws himself into the swamp. But it's pretty good for a movie with this kind of budget, I think.
Yeah.
And
do we know what the budget was for this movie?
We do not, but it's Netflix, so probably not a ton.
Which they spent all on blood and cool suits.
Yes, as we were talking about today, blood and cool suits. And I imagine in Netflix, in Indonesia, your Netflix dollar goes a lot farther than it does in California.
That's a good point. I did not consider that.
But I also kind of feel like Timo and Iko Uwais and Joe Tassim all called in a lot of favors to get lots of dudes in here to do these stuff. Some of the stunt performers, like one of them is clearly Joe Taslim's brother or cousin or look-alike, because like he's actually credited in there as one of the stunt performers.
They're funny. I mean, they do a great job. I feel like you can tell that all these extras, I guess, like I mean, maybe they just put out like a massive casting call for a bunch of extras to run in with machetes or whatever, but I'd do it. What else are you doing?
Yeah, it's like they got every stuntman in Indonesia and then some to show up.
Yeah, sure, why not? We'll help you out.
Yeah, there's free food. All right, cool, we're in.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Free food, free coffee, rub elbows with some good, yeah, fake wigs.
Get murdered by Joe Taslim in a movie. It's pretty great. But we get through the warehouse fight, we get through the operator fight, and now we have our main event. The two biggest stars in the movie, Joe Taslim and Iko Uwais, finally squaring off in like a legitimate fight. And this to me is like one of the most like brutal, creative fights in movie history. Like the only thing better might be the Mad Dog fight from the end of the Raid, but real close. Because, man, they pull out all the stops for this.
And they just keep going and going and going. Like, it doesn't end. And I don't say that in a negative way. I say that in like especially with Ito, like you just you just murdered. I mean, you killed, fought off, however you want to put it, at least 100 people at this point today. So you got to be tired. And now you're in this one-on-one battle with this really fresh. He probably has only killed, we'll say, 10 people tops at this point, and they were easy kills, right? And now he's got fresh legs. There was one point where I think Arian says, "Is that all you've got?" And I was like, "Dude, what else do you want him to give you? He's already killed like 100 people today. Chill out for a second. Give him a break. Give him man some water."
Yeah, and he's a little bit older. It's implied, so you know.
He's the older brother type, yeah. But everything, I mean, that's par for the course for this film. Is in every room they're in, they use every potential thing possible to maim, dismember, and kill they can, much to the delay.
Yeah, we get the running saw. We get a piece of a wooden box that the guys get thrown through, and then they use the nail as a weapon. You get the X-Acto knife that we talked about, the box cutter.
Yeah,
I think it's an X-Acto knife technically, because you can break the little piece off when it gets to all.
Yep. There's the tacks. There's a box of tacks that fall on the ground, and my first thought was, "Oh, we're gonna have a Mick Foley moment. Please, 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 let us have a Mick Foley moment." And I got what I asked for.
Oh yeah, and there's a nice little shot of Iko Uwais getting up after those tacks, and he's got the tack stuck in his hand.
Yep.
Just a nice moment. But the part of this fight that affected me the most, that hurt me the most, was when they're up against the pillar, the metal pillar.
Oh, I know what you're gonna say. Yep, go for it.
First, there's the punch that he dodges, and the guy just bong, and you get the great, just killer sound design of that thudding fist on metal part.
Yep.
And that hurt. But then Iko Uwais throws that kick, and he check kicks the metal post, and you hear that bong, and he actually stumbles away in pain, like rubbing his shin.
Yeah, right to the shin. I did the same thing. I had a Family Guy like.
Yeah, that's the part of the movie that hurt me the most, and you know, we've talked about all the grievous injuries that happen, but man, I could feel that in my skeleton. Like, it was just like,
well, you could tell, like, yeah, and he clearly didn't break. No, I was gonna, he clearly didn't break anything when he did that, but we've all been there, right? When you just hit your shin in just the wrong way, and to do it so hard, it just gives me. Ugh.
Well, that's, I guess, the magic of learning Salat, because it's a lot of elbows and check kicks and shin kicks and stuff. It's like Muay Thai with grappling, basically the type of martial arts that Iko Uwais uses.
Okay,
and you could tell, and that's the good thing. That's the cool thing about this fight, is because they both fight their specific style, which is you know, Ito's using throws and grappling and the big beautiful like wushu kicks and punches and stuff, and Aryan is using the real short body punches, and he's throwing elbows, and he does the flying elbows, and he does the flying knees and the check kicks, and that's a really cool styles make fights type of moment in this film, I think. Exemplified, of course, by that check kick into the pole, not shattering his leg in a million pieces like it would mine.
Yeah. And that was, every fight was choreographed and filmed and edited and sound mixed so well. But this was by far, I mean, and as it should be, I think, the best one in the whole film. I mean, this is our Super Bowl of, fights, and it's just one-on-one, everything just coming together with brute force, but all of the little details that go along with filming something like this and making that movie magic that makes it work so well was flawless.
And a lot of that, I feel like, goes back again to just letting your your screen fighters do what they know how to do and letting them figure it out as
Mhm.
much as anything. And then shooting, being enough of a collaborator to let the people who know what they're doing in these particular areas lead the way
Yeah.
and to serve the greater vision, because they know what you want, but they also know what looks good. They know what they're doing. These guys are two of the best movie fighters in movies right now.
Mhm.
You know, if you get out of their way and you don't Mortal Kombat it with terrible editing and terrible camera choices and bad second unit direction, uh, you they're going to make magic happen. So let them make the magic.
Yep.
And every little thing that gets added, like from some of the camera movements, there's a great like 360 camera movement of the guys around the guys as they're fighting, and it's just really well done, and it adds to the feeling of movement,
Mhm.
the back and forth that you're going to get from this kind of fight. And
I think there was one camera angle too in the bigger warehouse scene where he was fighting, the 100 people, where the camera was behind his head.
mm-hmm.
So you're getting a shot of the back of his head, but I I liked that angle for that specific section of fighting.
Yeah, it's like the third person perspective from a video game where you see the back of your
Yeah.
character's head as he's plowing through goons.
Yeah. It
Uh,
was very first person video gamey.
and it also gives you kind of a good idea of what the people who he's already kicked the asses of are seeing as he continues to beat the crap out of all their friends.
Yep.
I thought that was a fun touch. And then we get to the another standout moment of the fight is the with the X-Acto knife. It's Ito. It's stabbed into Ito's mouth with the blade
Yep.
coming out of his cheek, and he's got the piece of X-Acto knife that he pulled out of his own arm, and he stabs it into Arion's neck. And we get that great moment where he bites down on the plastic handle of the X-Acto knife and just shatters it
Mhm.
in what I can only imagine, Dennis hate him kind of moment.
Well, he's lost a lot of teeth in this movie at this point.
Yeah, we get a great CGI tooth coming out of his mouth during a punch earlier
Yep.
that is also really well done, and it looks good.
Yeah. I think that's my cringy thing. Usually is when that happens, like when teeth come out visibly.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have an issue with this. I don't, maybe because it was just one. I don't know, but I didn't cringe as much as I think normally would have. I think because in comparison of the rest of the movie, it didn't seem so bad.
Yeah, it's like you got off light by missing a tooth. You could have,
Yeah.
had your brain smashed on a meat hook or something.
Yeah. But that's great. And then he just kind of walked around and chilled for a little bit with that, blade sticking through his face.
Yeah, and I thought that. How do you feel about the end of this fight? How they kind of where it's kind of left?
I guess I thought that the knife in Aryan's neck was deeper. Like I thought that was a kill cut.
Mm-hmm.
And to see him bounce back from it so fast was what was most surprising to me. I can't say I took an issue with it because I was like, oh, I don't know. I mean,
Well, he
there
only
have been
had like an inch of the blade out. It wasn't like the
okay.
whole thing. And
Yeah.
he gets him under the chin, in the neck under the chin, not like in the throat.
Okay. So, yeah, I assumed maybe that's user error on my part. I probably didn't see exactly where it went in. It looked like a kill cut for me, but it wasn't. And what was the line? You can't kill what's already dead.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Aryan missed so many times with trying to shoot Ito, I was like, I feel like at this point we're about to get some backstory that Ito is actually, like Hercules, like half god, half man. You can't. Just bullets are terrified of him. He can't be killed.
I feel like a lot of it has to do with Aryan just not wanting to kill like his big brother
Yeah.
figure,
Yeah.
because they go after it, and each one could have possibly killed the other one at several points throughout the fight. But at
Yeah.
the end, it's like Ito lets Aryan live. He could have easily just cut his throat,
Yeah.
and then Aryan shoots, but he's not shooting Ito. Like he's shooting at Ito because like Fatih earlier shot near him but didn't shoot him. So he's
Yeah.
giving him that chance to walk off in the sunset. And also by this point, he's probably lost a shitload of blood. So I imagine he's a little wobbly, and he's clearly very wobbly. So
Yeah.
maybe his aim is not the best to begin with either.
Yep.
But I like that kind of ending moment. It feels very satisfying, and we get the nice ending where Reina gets on the boat and she's going off to safety, and they have a nice final wave at each other. Her and Ito. I thought that was very sweet, and I can
Yeah.
see why he didn't want to get on the boat, because he just would have probably died on the boat. I feel like he's not going to live too much. He wouldn't have lived too much longer without serious medical intervention
Yeah.
that you can't get from a butcher shop or a mob doctor type of thing.
I guess that's my final question with the way the movie ended and him, barreling through the crowd of gun wielding I don't know, people, is the way the movie cuts and going back to our rule of if you don't see them die, do they really? Do you think Ito ended up surviving, or do you think they actually killed him?
That's a great question. I feel like, so I'm of two minds of it. I've got the head and I've got the heart. The heart's hit, drives through Qianwu, just like that car that drove by outside making a lot of noise. Ito drives through Qianwu, smushes him like a pizza, and just keeps on barreling down the road with smoke streaming out of his beamer and blood all over the thing. And he makes a clean getaway, and then it goes back and the operator fixes him up, and then they become a 2-person team of vengeance. That's what my heart wants. My head says, even if he does run over Xianwu, that car is going to get stuck on some of those bodies, kind of bogged down, and they're just going to murder it.
Yeah.
But I really want to follow my heart and say he lived.
Yeah. I think I'm inclined to go with that kind of movie magic, especially because he lived this long already,
I feel like, yes, he has lived through a lot, but I also feel like he's completed his mission. So that's the other thing.
That's true. And didn't he say, didn't he say to the operator, like, just take care of the girl and I promise you'll complete your mission?
Yes, he did.
I feel like basically implying that she would get to kill him, or she would be able to say that he was dead at the end of it.
Yeah, that's the implication.
Yeah.
But we don't know what happens, because the movie ends with that great Joe Taslim smile. He's all covered in blood, and he's got that big maniacal grin on his face. It's just so dope. Such a great setup for the end of your movie.
It was, and the cut was perfect, like exactly where they cut it, right where it needed to happen.
Yeah, this movie is just like, you're right when you said this was like a master class. Like the editor, Arifin, I'm not even going to pronounce this guy's name, but the editor just absolutely just did a phenomenal job cutting this movie together. It's just, this whole thing just works. It's so crisp, it's so sharp, and everything is so intentional, all the choices that were made. And I feel, and that's one of the reasons why I texted Jay and you a while ago saying I needed to watch a movie where absolutely everybody in this movie gets covered in blood. And I said, we're going to watch The Night Comes For Us. And I feel like I've made a good choice.
I would say so as well. I think crisp is exactly the word I've been looking for to describe it. Everything is just extra crispy.
It's as sharp and as clean as a maniac's kukri before she jams it in somebody's neck.
Yep.
On that note, let's jam a kukri into the neck of this podcast, and get to the part where we talk about our final thoughts, our popcorn ratings. For those of you who don't know, we rate the movie on a scale of an extra small to an extra large popcorn. We can add any kind of extra features to that popcorn as we want to. Lindsey, you know the deal. What are your thoughts about The Night Comes For Us?
My honest and only real criticism of this entire film is that the plot was definitely secondary, if not, or probably closer to tertiary. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of, I feel like, thought put into it. But that said, everything else in this movie was executed to a T. And I can honestly say that I've never I've never experienced anything quite like this. I've never seen a movie this crispy. I've never seen fight scenes that carefully thought through and done. And I think, as we discussed, with the strengths of the actors in mind who were doing it. So all that said, I'm going to give this a solid large popcorn. I just have very, very few criticisms of it. So I enjoyed it. I'd have to be in a special mood to watch it again, I think, but I really have very, very few criticisms of it. It was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, this movie is a lot of fun, I think, and this movie is a lot in general. I'm going to join you in the large popcorn. It's not like 100% perfect, but my nitpicks are just that. I'm picking nits. This thing is just so well done, so well constructed, so well put together, so thought through that it's hard not to fall for its many charms. So I'm also going to join you in a large popcorn. I'm going to add some extra butter to that just because butter is almost the same viscosity as all the blood used in this film. So extra butter, extra corn syrup, blood. Let's just do the thing completely. And, if you've not seen this movie, it's 100% worth going onto Netflix and checking it out because everyone still has Netflix. Before you cancel Netflix for the final time because they're adding commercials or whatever, go watch this movie. Maybe if enough people watch it, they'll give Timo the money to do that operator flick that I desperately want because I want more of this world.
Absolutely.
We get 3 John Wick movies, and the John Wick movies are great. We get the John Wick spin-off TV show. That's also a fun idea. Give me an operator movie. Come on, Chad Stahelski. Maybe you just fund it out of your pocket. But on that note, speaking of funding things out of our pockets, that is the end of our podcast. You can follow the podcast on social media at Filmstrip Pod. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. We're everywhere people have to be to properly promote podcasts these days, except for, TikTok and stuff like that. I don't know how to do it. I don't want to learn, so that's not going to happen. But, follow us on social media, and most importantly of all, like, rate, subscribe, tell your friends, give us 5 stars if you liked it. If you didn't like it, go to hell. But on that note, for Lindsey, I'm Ron, and thank you for listening to Filmstrip.
Thank you for listening to Filmstrip. You can find more episodes on our website, filmstrippodcast.com. The Filmstrip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.